Hey, it's Mazzy. I'm excited for the first time in decades of an upcoming Ringo Starr record. Now, let's stop before you go, before you turn the channel looking for, some punk stuff or heavy metal or another Rush video or something from someone else. Listen to me. If you're a Beatles fan, if you're a country fan, Ringo Starr just announced today, we knew it was coming, a new album coming out in January, and they dropped the first song. And the record is produced by T-Bone Burnett, none other than T-Bone Burnett. Now, I'm excited. Why am I excited? Because for the last several years, Ringo's put out some pretty mediocre records, and there's always like one or two good tracks on it, and a lot of what I considered subpar material. During the pandemic, to his credit, he put a series of 3 10-inch records out, and every time he puts a record out for the last 20 years, it seems there's one thing looking back at Liverpool, or when we were growing up, when we were the Beatles, when we were whatever. Okay, we get it. But Ringo's love of country music has been evident for years, since the Beatle days. And actually, I got turned on to real great country because of the Beatles. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about his new record a little bit. It's coming out in January. The first song is called Time on My Hands, okay? I can't really play it. There you go. We don't want the copyright police, but go to YouTube. I'll put a link below to this video. What's great about it is it's a country song. If you don't like country music, you're not going to like it. But it's a great country song. And this album coming out, produced by T-Bone Burnett, and I'll get into that in a little bit. I think Billy Strings is on it. Alison Krauss is on it. A bunch of contemporary, the new country. They're not that they're brand new, but really great country. Now, if you don't know who T-Bone Burnett is, T-Bone Burnett, here's his latest album, which is really a folk country rock record. Now, I got turned on to T-Bone Burnett back in the 70s when he was on the Rolling Thunder Review with Bob Dylan, and he kind of was sort of the band leader. He was also in the Alpha Band that put out several records on Arista Records that I really like, with David Mansfield. His solo records are fantastic. Not big sellers, but he's probably more known for being a great producer of roots music. I like that he produced his ex-wife, Sam Phillips records. I'm a big fan of Sam Phillips records. I promote her any chance I get. He's produced some amazing soundtracks. And of course, the big ticket item that became huge is the film soundtrack to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, the Coen Brothers film. That became a surprise, massive hit of an album with a lot of great roots people on it. And it's just a fantastic record. And what's great about that album, it turned people on to country and roots music who really weren't into country and roots music. And I saw the live tour of that. They did a variation tour of that. But Ringo Starr's new album coming in pre-orders now. But let's go back in time. We got one of my favorite Stetsons on today, the great hats made out of Texas. Now, Stetson does not only make cowboy hats, but I just love this one. This is called a Stratoliner. This is when people started flying for business in the 30s and into the 40s, this is the hat that smart men wore when they traveled. The Stratoliner from Stetson. I'm open to sponsorships, Stetson, if you're watching. 1970, Ringo puts out this album. He put 2 albums out that year. At the beginning of the year, he did I want to say an oldies, but more a traditional album of classics, old-time classics, Bye Bye Blackbird. That was an interesting album, produced by 8-10 producers, George Martin, Quincy Jones, amongst others, doing these standards of the day. But later in the year, he goes to Nashville and puts this album together. And Pete Drake, great Nashville guitar player and producer, used all these great Nashville musicians and backed him up. And this is a fantastic record. And I love this record. I think it's one of his best solo records, Ringo Starr in Nashville, with all these great country musicians. So for decades, I've been saying to my buddies and my friends, I think he should do another country record because he does all this kind of schmaltzy stuff and half-baked records that it's hard for him to fit in. He's 84 years old now. And finally, and I thought he should hook up with T-Bone Burnett decades ago when I first started following T-Bone Burnett in the 70s and then into the 80s and beyond. But he's finally done it, and I am so excited. But let's talk about country music and the Beatles, and he has a huge love for country music. I'm going to go back to a few records here. Of course, the Beatles were very into rock and rockabilly and some country songs. And at the end of 1964, when Beatles 65, now I'm showing the American editions because these are the ones that I got as a young lad and I got as 11, 12, 13 years old. And on here, of course, you got Honey Don't, rockabilly song, great song on here. I'll Follow the Sun is more sort of Paul's folky thing. So there is a crossover with folk music and country music. Even No Reply and I'm a Loser by John Lennon. I just love this record. Closest it comes to Beatles for Sale in the UK. But this is the one, this to me is the first true country song written by the Beatles, and that is I Don't Want to Spoil the Party. I don't want to spoil the party, so I'll go. I mean, listen to that song. I'm sure George is playing his Gretsch, the country gentleman, or one of those guitars on there. So he's really doing a great job on here. Of course, they're a crossover, doing Words of Love. Buddy Holly always kind of crossed in that kind of country thing too, coming from Lubbock, Texas. The rockabilly thing. Early on, of course, the $1 Million Quartet of Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley. The whole country influence in rock and roll is important, especially in rockabilly. So being of age, young age, and getting turned on to this music, I don't think I consciously thought about it as country. But then you go to Rubber Soul, and the American Rubber Soul is more of a rootsy folk country album than any of their albums. And I always say I love the American track listing. I know it's a bastardization of what they meant to do. Instead of opening with Drive My Car, it opens up with I've Just Seen a Face, a great folky country thing. Norwegian Wood, Michelle, It's Only Love, Girl, I'm Looking Through You, definitely. Run for Your Life, a very country-ish take. I didn't go out, I mean, even look at that. That looks like a country album if there ever was one, called Rubber Soul. I just love this. Of course, the American edition, to me, is superior. Accidentally superior. In 1966, this comp came out that collected singles and a few songs that would be on Revolver that summer. And it's a problematic comp when you think about it, because they took the great Lennon songs off of what would be Revolver early, but we got to hear them on Yesterday and Today, this comp. Of course, it's the infamous Butcher cover here, but this is the cover that was pasted over. But on here, a song that a lot of people I remember not quite loving, but I really got into it. Of course, Ringo always gets a song or two on an album, and the song he gets on here is Act Naturally. I didn't know who wrote that song, but because of that song, I got into Buck Owens. Buck Owens, Bakersfield country, California country. He wrote the song. The song is on here. They're going to put me in the movies. They're going to make a big star out of me. So country, really kind of promotes and emulates the love that Ringo had for American country music and this kind of country. Yeah, pedal steel guitars, just great picking on the Telecaster, the Country Gentleman, and just wonderful records. Anytime I see a Buck Owens record, I pick it up, and it's all because of this album and Ringo's version of Act Naturally. Of course, over the whole career of the Beatles and solo, they would do some country influences. Of course, on the White Album, Paul McCartney with Rocky Raccoon. And of course, I hate to say it, my least favorite song of the Beatles is Don't Pass Me By. You were in a car crash and you lost your hair, but it was a song Ringo actually wrote earlier, and he finally recorded it with the Beatles here. And I need to kind of embrace it at some point, because it's a great country song in a way. And Ringo, again, goes back to his roots and does something country. That's why I'm so tentatively excited for this Ringo Starr album coming up. And of course, around the end of the 60s, so many artists. In 1967, Bob Dylan does John Wesley Harding. That's very country folk centric. Of course, in 1969, he also goes to Nashville before Ringo, obviously, and records this beauty of a record. His voice changes. He records this with, again, a lot of the same musicians. Kenny Buttery, Charlie McCoy, Pete Drake again, Norman Blake, great flat-picking acoustic guitar player, Charlie Daniels, with a guest artist of Johnny Cash. This was the year, I believe, that Dylan was on the Johnny Cash show, and they do that wonderful duet on here. But of course, Lay Lady Lay is on here, the big hit. But this is a country album. This is Dylan's purest country albums. He would go back to Nashville, do some things over the years, but this is the one. I mean, just look at that cover. And I remember a lot of people surprised in 1969, but you shouldn't be surprised. Think of even the Rolling Stones here, Country Honk on here. And of course, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards and the Stones embrace country. They put a song on, one or two songs maybe, country-like, on a bunch of their albums. Think Wild Horses, a song that was really kind of a tribute or a vision of Graham Parsons that Keith and Mick wrote. And of course, the Flying Burrito Brothers even recorded that before the Stones did. Later on The Girl with the Faraway Eyes, 1978, on Some Girls Too. Over the years, they would do country versions of their songs. They had a country thing. Sometimes Mick Jagger would force the Southern country accent in the song. I don't think he needed to do that, but it works. And I just love that so much. Of course, I could pick a bunch of solo Beatles, but especially think of this, Behind That Locked Door. What a perfect country song. You got pedal steel on here, got the great acoustic guitars on All Things Must Pass here. You got his great cover, If Not For You. New Morning, that Dylan album also has a lot of country feel to it. The whole country rock thing, of course, with the Byrds in 68, the Beau Brummels in 68 with Bradley's Barn, Flying Burrito Brothers, so many things. The Grateful Dead in 1970 did their back-to-back kind of rootsy country folk things. Not every track, but they really got people my age into accepting country music. But there was that little kind of difference in the 70s of, redneck country and the Nashville overproduced sound. Some of it I like now. I go back and I'll listen to Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton and, so many other artists of the 1960s into the 1970s. Porter Wagner, just these great musicians, Charlie Rich too in the 70s. But then you had the alternate country, and you had the Outlaws out of Austin, out of Texas, with Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson and people like Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt and these kind of crossover folk to country things, Tom Paul Glaser, and doing these amazing, amazing records. And I always wish Ringo would come back, especially after he did those great records of the Ringo collaboration with everyone and then Goodnight Vienna. And after that, it kind of went like this. And he just was trying to chase the monkey, do something to try to get on the charts and do pop things. And I think if he stayed with a rootsy bass a little more, I think it would have been well served for Ringo. So a lot of kind of country feel on that. Even Paul McCartney over the years, the single Country Dreamer, which was the B-side of a single. Of course, on here, on Ram, I'd say probably the best Paul McCartney. He has, songs like Heart of the Country. I mean, literally it has the lyric word country in it. Three Legs here. He has that country folky feel on here too. And, even John Lennon seems to be the Beatle who'd be the furthest away from country music, yet he loved Elvis Presley and liked that rockabilly stuff. So when I really stop and think about it, wait a second, John Lennon would be into it too, but think of the song Crippled Inside on here. And him playing with the Beatles on For You Blue, the lap steel, on Let It Be. fantastic. So in closing, I'm tentatively excited about this new album coming out. Again, there's a link below to the entire video. But she had other plans. Nothing outrageous about this song. It doesn't break any new ground, but it's a good, solid country song with beautiful production from T-Bone Burnett, beautiful pedal steel guitar and acoustic sound. And so I bet this is going to finally have a feel of an album that Ringo deserves. So Mazzy promoting a record that's not even out yet, and we'll see when it comes out in January. I'll bring it back and I'll let you know my take on it. So thank you, T-Bone. Thank you, Ringo. Mazzy loves you.